Hello and thanks for watching the Friends the Farm lecture series. My name is Candace Hawes, and every session is designed to deliver a small and in-depth dose of cannabis education. I want to thank all of our viewers and customers from the pharmacy, the pottery, and the Natural Healing Center, as well as all of our friends for joining us from around the world. Please make sure to subscribe to our content so you don't miss any of our future webinars. I'm honored to present today's topic. There are still over 2,000 people sentenced to serve multiple year and sometimes de facto life sentences for nonviolent cannabis offenses. These types of sentences are still being handed down today, even when the cannabis industry is generating millions of dollars as tax revenue, employing thousands of people, and even we have politicians investing in cannabis companies. Advocating for the release of nonviolent cannabis offenders is a pillar of Glass House and is near and dear to my heart personally. Outside of working for Glass House, I also serve as a director of a normal chapter. And in our normal monthly meetings, we keep their stories alive and correspond with these cannabis POWs. Luke was one of our favorites, and we sent him cards, monthly cards in our meetings over the years, and have always advocated for his relief. That's why I'm so pleased not only to have him here today, but to call him one of our colleagues. Luke will discuss his remarkable journey and share the challenges that he's faced after being sentenced to 22 years after being forced operating a medical cannabis collective during the early days of Prop 215. Luke was released this year after serving 14 years, almost 15 years, and was released as part of the Compassionate Release Program. He's going to talk more about this and share the story of other POWs, talk about the Compassionate Release Program, about Reeform and the social impact program that Glass House is launching. And with that, I'm very, very excited to have Luke Scarmazzo with us today. As I mentioned, he was actually one of the last medical marijuana providers in the state of California that was persecuted by the Drug Enforcement Agency when the cities in California were unable to, use their own resources to get rid of the collective owners. They, used the federal government's resources, who came down with a heavy hand, and handed down these very, very, very harsh sentences, and took these young men like yourselves out of their families, and put you guys in these really, really harsh sentences. And so it's just you can't even say, how hard it was that, what you went through. And so I'm so happy to have you here today. And I'm so happy to be working with you. And so, so happy that you could be here with us today and to talk about this, really, really important topic. And I've been so happy, how much the cannabis industry has stepped up, some of them at least, and have been putting resources into advocating for these prisoners. So, I would love you to share some of your stories. So if you can kind of take us back to the very beginning, if you can talk about, how you opened your cannabis collective, why you opened your cannabis collective, and how it brought you down, this path.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me, Candace. It's been an awesome, just humbling moment being able to just come out and, meet you and be able to talk with you and then be able to work with you. For those of you who know Candace, you know this, but for those of you that don't, Candace was advocating for cannabis prisoners back before there was advocacy organizations for cannabis prisoners. So, this is something that was near and dear to my heart as well. So it's an honor to be on here with you. So I just wanted to start there first. It's crazy. For the people that don't know what it was like back in the Prop 215 days, when after we legalized in 1996 in California, and just know what the industry is like now, you are missing a huge piece of history. So I'll back up a little bit. So I grew up in California in the 90s, immersed in cannabis. My dad, mom, or not my mom, excuse me. Sorry, mom. My dad, my aunts, my uncles, they all grew and smoked cannabis, sold cannabis. I mean, it was everywhere in our neighborhood. Our neighbors did. It was not a big deal. So, naturally, it was something that was around me all the time. I grew my first cycle of cannabis when I was 15. A Northern Lights version, Northern Lights number 5. My mom ended up catching it in flower and pulled it and then said she threw it away. I don't know if she really did, though. I think my dad might have got that. But anyway, Yeah, so just, immersed in the cannabis, scene and culture of that time. And it was really cool, exciting time. We had all kinds of new cultivars and stuff that were coming from different regions of California. And so when in 2003, California passed the Medical Marijuana Program Act. And that was kind of the base regulation for how we could open dispensaries in California, and really the first ones of how we could open dispensaries in the world, because we didn't have like a blueprint at this time for how this was supposed to be done. So this Medical Marijuana Program Act comes, and it kind of loosely authorizes collectives and cooperatives to be able to operate and cooperatively and collectively grow and dispense cannabis. So in 2004, right after it went into effect, my good brother at the time, who ends up being my co-defendant, of course, but my good brother at the time, Ricardo Montes, opened California Healthcare Collective. We opened it in November of 2004. He was the first Mexican-American dispensary owner in the country, something he's very proud of. And we successfully ran it all the way until 2006. It was such an exciting time. Like I said, it was like things where we were kind of figuring out like rules and stuff as we went. We didn't have all the regulations, the taxes. You paid your city tax, you paid the state tax, you paid your regular nonprofit corporate taxes, and that's all you paid. So it was, like I said, a much different system. We didn't have branding and stuff back then. We had cultivars that were in medicine vials, basically, of what you get your pills from Walgreens in. And they had labels on them, but they were labels that we made ourselves. And these labels, we brainstormed on what requirements and notices were supposed to be on the labels and stuff like that. And some of these, early regulations that some of the early dispensary owners like ourselves came up with at the time ended up being incorporated later into the governor's guidelines for how dispensaries were supposed to operate, and kind of became the base cornerstone of how a lot of dispensaries began to operate at the time, where it was more of a collective medical feel to the dispensary. You came in, you checked in with the security, then you walked into a receptionist, she checked you in with paperwork, and you kind of waited to go back into a back sales room. It was a kind of a different setup than it is now, where now you have kind of more of like the Apple store feel to it, and where you have everything lit up, and it's a totally different experience. It's just a natural progression. But then we had, when we first opened, I would say people didn't really even realize what we were. They wanted to come in to even see if we were really a dispensary. They would come in, they would look and say, like, are these guys really selling medical cannabis here? And then they would like turn around and leave. Like that was good enough. Then they would just come in. They had their card. They had their recommendation. They didn't even come to buy. They just wanted to see if this was really happening. It was that novel at the time. And so our patient base began to grow exponentially. And I think at the time we got right around September of 2006, so almost 2 years in operation, we had, close to 3,000 patients who would come to our dispensary on a regular basis. And it was just such a welcoming environment, a community environment, a positive environment where people were getting the help that they needed, the cultivation knowledge that they needed, the strands that they needed, the cultivars they needed. It was a really, really special time. And unfortunately, in 2006 was another date on September 27th, which is my daughter's birthday. Shout out to Jasmine. She's in a bunch of the pictures. She's almost in every picture that I have in when I'm in prison, because she came up and supported me that much. So I love you, baby, if you're on watching. But yeah, it was just, something that where we had so many patients that were going in and they were coming in and they were supporting us. It was such a really just inspiring time. And on September 27, 2006, the DEA raided and arrested us. And they took us to trial. And inside trial, what we didn't know at the time was, in a federal court, state law doesn't matter. Medical cannabis doesn't matter. If we even said those words, if we even said the words medical marijuana or medical cannabis or California law, the judge said that he would disbar the jury and declare a mistrial and put a whole new jury in. And if we continued to do it, they would hold us in contempt of court. So that's how serious it was. And that's how really handicapped we were going into this trial, where they would get to paint us as basically drug kingpins is what we were charged as. And we just had to get real creative with how we would present our defense. And it was a situation where we had to do our best, but not surprisingly, we were found guilty. And, it's funny because it's the anniversary of the month that we were sentenced in November. So in November of 2008, I was sentenced to 22 years in prison. Ricardo was sentenced to 20 years in prison. And then that began a whole nother, saga of fighting and justice that we had to get through. So yeah, it's been definitely a struggle at times, a challenge at times, but I won't say it's fair, but I will say it's worth it.
Yeah. I throughout all of those years, I mean, I know that we followed your case throughout so many years, and like there was so many appeals, and you were, I think, one of the most vocal cannabis, offenders. And there was so many, I remember you even had like a Facebook page. And who was, typing all your letters and corresponding with you? How were you able to stay so in touch with like the community, have them support you and follow you? Like how were you able to, have such a strong following during that time?
Well, it was really important to me to stay connected to the community and to the movement, really, because, this is special to us. This is something that's the plant. I love the plant, so it was when I went into prison, I was an advocate before prison. I was an advocate during my trial. They played my video at trial, and everybody knows, how that went. But and then, during my incarceration, I've always been an advocate. And, some people will even say that's why I did as long as I did, is because I was so and advocated so greatly. I don't know, that's speculation. And if it is, so be it. It's something that I feel strongly about. It's something that I value, and that, something that I will stand on. It's something that I think these laws are unjust, and I will continue to fight against them until they're abolished completely.
Yeah. I know that your daughter was 5 years old when you were incarcerated unjustly. And I actually have a 5-year-old. And I know my 5-year-old won't let me go to bed before I snuggle him. Like he will not go to sleep until I snuggle him. And so I can't even imagine how hard that was. So can you talk just a little bit before we move on to like talk about other prisoners, about how it impacts the family? Because I know for those people that are watching this live, it's about to be Thanksgiving and we have Christmas coming up. And so like, I cannot even imagine how hard it would be for like my family, for them to like, it's a punishment, not just for me, but to like my whole family. And they didn't do anything. That they did not do anything. And it's like more of a punishment for them than it is for me. Like they didn't do anything wrong. And so like, that's what I think is the most unjust thing about the whole situation, here. And so can you talk about like that?
Yes. Absolutely. I mean, serving a prison sentence is extremely hard. Serving a prison, being a family member of someone who's serving a prison sentence, especially a child, a son or a daughter, is the hardest. Yeah. I'll say that again. It's the hardest. Hats off to all the kids who have a mother or father who are incarcerated or who were incarcerated and had to grow up without one. Man, like the challenges that are presented to them that they have to overcome, and they have to do it on their own or with one other parent, is just a testament to the resilience of what those children are made of. And my hat goes off to them. So yeah, that was the hardest part. The hardest part of incarceration is missing your family and missing your family members. My daughter was 5. She had to go through many of the monuments that kids go through without me being there because of a nonviolent cannabis offense. Yeah. That's not right. And it's something that she's really passionate about making sure that no other little girls go through the things that she had to go through. So, I'm real excited to support her on that and her mission on how she fits in and what she wants to do in that area and the impact that she wants to make. And, I'm going to continue to do that too until we until we make sure that nobody else is, and we're going to do it together, and we'll do it separately, and we'll do it until it needs to be done.
Yeah, and that's beautiful, and I love that. She's taken this as a life lesson and wants to help other people from that. I think that's really great, and that she's taken that and made it into something positive and wants to help other people. And I hope, I hope that she's able to do something like that, and that I would love to support her in that. That's really great.
Yeah, she's an amazing, special young lady.
Yeah. And I think that they should add that to one of the circumstances for compassionate release. And I would like to see them add that. Like, if somebody has 3 young children, and how is a mother supposed to raise those children by herself? And
they do have a family circumstance thing, that section that was expanded, but it doesn't include that. And I think that you're right. I think that should be definitely a factor that's considered when doing compassionate release.
Yeah. Or even one child without a father or mother is too many.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Thank you for touching on that. I know that is something that's difficult, but it's something that everybody needs to think about.
It's very, very difficult, but it's something that has to be talked about, so that people know that it goes on, and that there's other people that are going through it with you.
Yeah. Thank you, Luke.
Yeah.
So yeah, very, very powerful story. Like you said, I think that sometimes the government, unfortunately, does like to try to, make a lesson of people and take those people that are advocates, and unfortunately, they can't break us down, and sometimes it makes us stronger, and just creates an army. And that's what you have, an army of people that are going to support you, and that you're going to now support other people, and help other people now,
pay it forward. That's the important part, is to continue to pay it forward and serve. And that's why what leads to this is where we talk about people like Parker Coleman, who was sentenced to 60 years in prison.
Oh my gosh. And I mean, of course, I know about Parker Coleman's case, because we used to write letters to him as well. And I've advocated for his release. He's another one that, Last Prisoner Project, Glass House has advocated for. You've been advocating for him, but the more I learn about him, and yesterday I was telling you when I was preparing the slides, just it makes me so upset. I mean, you can tell our audience about him, but he really has no connection to direct crime. So please.
Yeah, Parker was sentenced to 60 years in prison. I mean, think about that. Well, let's just pause right there. Just to the fortitude of somebody to be able to continue to hold his head high like Parker does every day, with that sentence sitting over you, is, again, just a testament to the type of person he is. And those smiles that you see, like in those pictures, that's how he is. Parker is serving time in one of the hardest, most violent prisons in the United States right now. He's in USP Beaumont. It's down in Texas. The USP system is the maximum security side of the federal prison system, and it's crazy. It's like everything that you hear or see or think about on like Hollywood prisons, and the wildness and the stuff that's in movies, well, it really happens in those prisons. So, shout out to Parker, especially during this holiday season, and to him and his family. We're continuing to fight for him. If you follow Parker, send him a hello, send him a happy Thanksgiving. If you don't follow Parker, please go ahead and check him out on Instagram at follow or Free Parker Coleman. So yeah, it's cool. He's been incarcerated since 2010, and it's time for him to come home, man. He's been in there a long time. Really, really, really difficult situation that he's dealing with. Nonviolent cannabis offense. And Parker is somebody that has been getting a lot of notoriety and a lot of support because of how egregious his case is. Kyle, who sits on the helm of our company at Glass House, has been very vocal about about Parker's release. So Parker has been on the forefront of 40 Tons and Last Prisoner Project, and all the other great Freedom Grow Forever, all the other great organizations that we'll touch on later. And he's been, on the forefront of all those organizations. So we're really hoping that if we continue to say Parker's name out loud, continue to push for him, and continue to just show how crazy and ridiculous a 60-year prison sentence is for a nonviolent cannabis crime, that if we continue to show the ridiculousness of it, that he's going to be able to come home. We're really excited for what can happen with some of these new things that are going towards the law for him. So we're really hopeful for Parker.
Yeah. And he has his sentence will get him out when he's 85. And with
85.
the life expectancy of a man of being 85, he has a de facto life sentence for cannabis.
And it's even lower in prison. It's even lower in prison. I believe that the life expectancy is like, for an American male is close to like 78, I think, last time I checked it. And in prison, it's significantly lower. So, that is basically, and 60-year sentence is a life sentence in prison. And especially in the places that he's at, if you survived a 60-year sentence in any of those places, they should give you a medal. Yeah. But, it's just, we got to bring Parker home. We got to bring him home. We got to bring everybody home. And Parker's definitely one of the first ones we need to loop in there.
Yeah. And his co-defendant, Corvain Cooper, who's from 40 Tons, he says, he communicates with Parker. And sometimes, he just gets so despondent and just feels like he's just never going to get out. Like he just loses hope sometimes. So, we'll share.
I've been there. It can be discouraging. You get in these situations where, you're slammed down into a cell and you're getting your food through a bag or a tray, and it's like old bologna sandwiches, and you're not getting your mail, and it can be very, very challenging. So I can relate to him. If Parker can hear this afterwards, just keep your head up, brother. We're continuing to fight for you, and don't give up. Keep your head up. I know it can get dark in there, but the smallest point of light is very visible when it's dark. So here we come.
And one day we'll have you on the webinar series, right?
Oh yeah. That'll be a good one right there.
We'll have you on the webinar series, just like Luke. All right. And then next person we want to, bring to light and share his story is Jerry Heyman. Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about Jerry?
Yeah, this one hits close to home for me right here. Jerry's a homeboy from California, Central Valley. He was sentenced to 10 years for a nonviolent cannabis offense. The really, really sad part is Jerry was a star athlete. He played at Fresno State, Eastern Michigan, and just was, had his trajectory in life was shooting up. He had a lot of stuff going for him. He had a really, really bright future. And this really derailed his life and his family's life. So, this just happened. This isn't something like where we're reaching back and saying, hey, Jerry did time back with me in 2008 or something. Like this case, I think his appeal just went final in 2021. So, this is a fresh case. His sentence is still ahead of him. So we have to really work hard to get Jerry home. This is a young man that when you put him back into the community, you're going to see the positive effect that he has. And these are the individuals that we need to bring back into the community. And this is the devastation that it causes when we pull them out, when we pull somebody like this out, that is a shining beacon of, education and athleticism and just a really bright spot. And then you derailed his life and his neighborhood and his community and his family behind a nonviolent cannabis offense. And Jerry still has the whole sentence ahead of him. We need to bring him home. He's been in there long enough already, and it's time to bring Jerry home. Shout out to Jerry and his family. Happy Thanksgiving. And we got to bring them home as well.
Yeah, well said. Thank you.
Bubba.
Sanford. Bubba.
I say Bubba because that's what we used to call Sanford. So Sanford actually did a lot personal time with him. So this was a case that was really close to home. This was one of my partners. Actually, this was a workout buddy of mine. So we were in the gym together and stuff like that. So, Sanford, everybody calls him Bubba. He's from Florida, Pensacola area. Just a really, he's huge. He looks like he could play like offensive line for the Green Bay Packers or something. But the biggest heart on the guy. He would literally give the shirt off his back to you. He's the biggest, kindest guy around, and got caught getting, I think, I forget the exact amount, but getting some bags of cannabis in the mail, nonviolent cannabis offense, sentenced to 12 and a half years in prison. And he basically has exhausted almost all of his appeals. He has one shot left, and what we're trying to do is make it an effective one that is going to get him out. Bubba has a lot of good organizations advocating for him as well. Can Do is another one, and we'll touch on the good work that they do too. What's really impressive about Bubba is he has like this rap sheet that's like 3 feet long of programming that he has done. These classes, all these classes he's done and taught. So like one of the best examples of rehabilitation and just extensive programming that I've seen personally in prison. So really excited for what Bubba will be able to do when you get him outside of those walls, and just the effect and the organization and motivation that he'll be able to give a lot of people in his community. So shout out to Bubba and his family. I know his mom is one of his biggest advocates. And, I know just from talking to my mom, how difficult it can be to go through these holidays and times without, a loved one, and your son, especially, one that, spent so much time with. So shout out to his mom and their family and what they have to go through during these holidays. And Bubba, listen, Bubba, we love you, brother. We're coming for you. I know that turkey that they're serving this year in there is not going to be the greatest, but we're going to get you on this next one. Trust me.
Yeah, I hope so. And we do get a lot of these folks out too, these guys out. If you go to like Last Prisoner Project, they do have a website page where you can see like their pictures. And I love to see them racking up and getting these guys out. One by one, we're getting them out.
We're getting wins. Yeah, we are getting wins in here. And we're getting more now than we've ever gotten. So, just to put it in context, there was no organizations even tracking this back then. So now that we have this and we're getting wins now, we're getting people out. And the people that we're talking about now are some of the last prisoners that are in there for cannabis. We're talking about the last several thousand people that are doing time in the United States for cannabis, especially in the federal system. So that's why we're making this really strong push to bring them home, because this is the last group we got to get home.
Yeah. All right. Okay. And then Edwin Rubis, another guy who's done a lot of extensive rehabilitation.
This case right here. Now, Edwin, like, if you want to talk about rehabilitation alone, we could probably talk about that for the rest of the webinar if it has to do with Edwin. The man has taught and taken more classes than I think me, Weldon, Bubba, and Parker all combined. Like, I don't know how he does it. He does music. He does everything. He's I haven't had the opportunity of doing time with Edwin. But in the people that I know that have done time with him say, like, he is one of those guys who's doing everything, and everybody likes him, and everybody is, giving him things and, gravitating towards him. So, and this Edwin's case is really surprising to me and encouraging for 2 reasons. Is one, I thought Edwin was going to beat everyone out because of how well his case was covered, how well he did, how good he was at showing what he had accomplished in prison and his rehabilitation record. I think last year the USA Today did a huge write-up on Edwin. It was on the back page. It was awesome. And usually when you see somebody on the back page of the USA Today, it's not long before they're out. Yeah. And you can go back and fact check that if you want to on me. If there is a prisoner on the back of that USA Today taking up the whole entire opinion page, they are out very shortly after that. Unfortunately for Edwin, we don't know what's taken so long. He's been in there. It's like I said, it's been over a year since that big write-up. I thought he was going to beat me out. It can't be much longer. His case is one of the most egregious. And again, just a multiple decade sentence for a nonviolent cannabis offense, and a gentleman that's turned his life around tremendously. He does ministry in prison. I know he's really, really enthusiastic about getting out and continuing his ministry and continue to help people find their faith through what he does. So shout out to Edwin. Happy Thanksgiving to him and his family. And, last one in, brother. Last one in.
23 years already served. He is a candidate for compassionate release, if nobody else.
Yeah. Even if you felt like, even if you were the most staunch opponent to cannabis and, thought it should require harsh sentences, 23 years is enough for any crime, any cannabis offense. So
let's kill somebody and get less.
Yeah, I mean, there's child molesters, there's rapists, there's murderers that are getting much less time than that. The man's already served 23 years. Even if you thought that he should serve some time, he's obviously done more than that. Let's let Edwin home. Let him come back to his family. Let his kids be able to, gravitate towards him and learn and be with their abuelo and all that. So come on.
Yeah. Seems like could be a great benefit to the society being back out with
Oh
us.
yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Edwin's one of those, like, when I was in prison, you could tell, like, I hate to say this, but like a lot of times it's really apparent the guys that invest in turning their life around and being productive and being a positive influence. And then there's some guys that they just don't care. They'll be back and they'll come back to prison, and maybe they haven't learned that lesson yet. Maybe they'll learn it later, and hopefully sooner than later. But sometimes they never learn it. Sometimes that's just, the path they choose and how they want to walk. But Edwin, no doubt, is going to be a pillar in his community, and I'm actually really excited to see the great work that he's going to be doing.
Yeah, well, let's hope it'll be sooner than later. Yes. And a holiday miracle.
Yes.
All right, and then we have a female to highlight.
Yes, Betty Jenkins. There are hundreds of females and women who are incarcerated for cannabis. I want to just stress that. I know a lot of times we have the, guys that get a lot of the press and the notoriety and the publicity. And, sometimes that overshadows a lot of the women who we have in prison who are incarcerated for cannabis. So I think it's really important that we always do make sure that we include women in the advocacy that we do that, because those prisons are just as bad for them. The guards are just as mean. The food is just as terrible. So, we need to advocate for all the women who are incarcerated for cannabis just as enthusiastically and with as much energy as we do for the men. So yeah, going to Betty. The sad thing about Betty is she's been in there so long. Betty, I believe, gets out next year. She's nearly served her entire sentence. I hope that she gets out before that happens. All of the people that we just highlighted, I want to say, have the opportunity to always get out during the holidays if the president will just use his pen and sign his name on the bottom of a clemency petition. Instead of a turkey, Mr. Joe Biden, please pardon the people that are on this webinar and everyone else who is incarcerated for a nonviolent cannabis offense. It's really easy. We don't want you to pardon the turkeys. We want you to pardon people, and pardon people who are incarcerated for cannabis. So Betty and her husband were growing cannabis, and they're in Michigan. It was a legal state. This is not in the South. They weren't growing in Alabama or Louisiana, where the prisons and laws are crazy. This was in a legal recreational cannabis state, and she served nearly all of her sentence. Now she was sentenced to almost 11 years. Her release date is next year. She's 62 years old. She deserves to be at home with her family during this time. This is the holidays. You have a 62-year-old woman who would like to grow plants in her garden in prison. Joe Biden, where are you at? Please use your pen. You White House staff, use your pen on these people. Use your pen to bring these people home to their families during the holidays. I can't stress how just real quick, it gets really difficult in prison during the holidays, because that's when you start to miss the times like being around family, and when you call home, everybody's, at these functions and at these gatherings with family and loved ones. And, you're happy for them because you want your family to be happy and stuff like that. But there's always a part of you that misses it. And it's a time when there's the most fights in prison. There's the time when it's the most disciplinary write-ups. It's the time when it's, there's the most tension in prison, because people are just really at a high level of stress. They're missing their families, and it's really tough. So, I just wanted to say, this time right now, it's really important that we keep their names alive, the thoughts alive of everyone who's incarcerated for cannabis, especially during the holidays, because this is when they need us the most.
Yeah. And so that's one of the reasons too why we put together the list of, or you did actually, thank you very much, put together a list of all the addresses of all the people that we talked about today, which is included in the handouts.
Yes.
So everybody, please, if you could just take a couple moments, and if you could just maybe just touch on like how impactful and like how exciting it is to get a piece of mail from somebody, and like what that kind of feels like when you guys get something like that.
It is Christmas. Like, I know that like that sounds exaggerated, but it's not. Like when the mail list goes up in prison, right? It goes up like right next to the officers, the correctional officer's office. It'll get taped up. The whole entire unit or cell block will go down there. You're talking about 200 men will all swarm down there to see if they're on the mail list. And it's usually like 10 people, usually 10 or 15 people out of the whole entire unit. And those 10 or 15 people are like, not only are they ecstatic, but like their friends and the people that are with them are walking back to their cells, like looking at what they got in mail, whether it be pictures or a letter or something like that. So it is so important to get mail. And it is like, it's a godsend. And it's also, I want to say this though, is not only important to write them a letter, because it is, and especially during this time, but also write their congressman a letter, write their senator a letter, write your senator a letter, your congressman in tandem. Send Betty a letter, and also send your congressman or senator a letter talking about Betty's case and how you want them to come home. And that can be very effective too, because it's awesome for us to be able to get those letters. But I really feel great when I get one of those letters and it says, hey, guess what, Luke? I wrote a letter to a senator for you today too. So yeah, that means a lot.
That's cool. And we have an Amber D that's watching too, in the audience, that was also a cannabis offender that was incarcerated and released. So that's really awesome too. And we're happy that you're watching. We're happy that you're
welcome home, Amber.
Yes, awesome. Welcome, and thank you for watching, Amber. And she said too that was like the best moment ever when she got a piece of mail, and that that it meant so much too. So
oh yeah,
thank you for sharing that. So I want to talk a little about when you found out. So let's talk. So how did you get released? And tell us about the moment when you found out that you're going to get released, and then talk about 814.
Sure. Okay, so I had exhausted all of my appeals. I went to trial, lost. Went on direct appeal, lost. Filed my habeas corpus motions, lost. And then you get to a point to where like you either ran out of money or people who will give you money for attorneys, and you're just sitting there. And that's where a lot of the people who are incarcerated for cannabis are at right now. They've exhausted their appeals, or they signed a plea bargain and they don't have any appeals, and they're just sitting there and they're having to serve this crazy long sentence, these crazy 40, 60-year sentences that we're talking about. So there was a really novel part of the law that was changed in 2008 with President Trump when he signed the First Step Act. And that was one of the first prison reform bills that had ever been passed in my lifetime. And I'm pretty sure ever. I can't say that to point to any other prison reform legislation at least in the United States. So it was a really cool bill because it did things like incentivized good time and made it to where in the federal system you didn't have any incentive to do good. They only took away time. They didn't have any way to earn time back or earn more time off. Well, they changed that with the First Step Act and incentivized things like classes and getting your degree and things like that, which are important to us and important to the community, to have people that are coming out of prison who have spent their time well being educated and being productive. So it's a win-win for everybody. So it was a really cool bill, but tucked into this bill was something really exciting. And it was a provision called the Compassionate Release Statute. And it was an old 1980s provision that had been baked into some legislation that basically allowed the BOP to nominate somebody for compassionate release if the director of the BOP thought that they were worthy. And guess what? It was never used, like ever. The BOP just had it there. I think in the whole time it was there since the early 1980s. I think it was 84 when it came in. I think it was used in single digits. So it was obvious that it wasn't something that the BOP was real excited about. And to their defense, in their mental programming, early releases and stuff is not something they're trained to think about. They are trained to keep you in prison, and that's their job. So, asking the jail keeper to come up with good people to let out of the jail is not a very good system. And Congress actually, to their credit, realized that. So they changed the Compassionate Release Act, or Compassionate Release Statute, to broaden it to where now prisoners could bring the petitions themselves. So that was like a really big deal now, because now all these people who I said, like myself, who were sitting there and have exhausted all their appeals or didn't have any appeals, had an opportunity to get back into court. So we file in 2019. I get these sample motions. Weldon's out there sending me stuff. Weldon Angelos from Mission Green and the Weldon Project. Shout out to Weldon. I know I just dropped your name in the middle of everything, but anyhow, Weldon's sending me stuff, and I'm writing this motion. Georgine Arson's one of my number one advocates from day one. I love you, Georgine, if you're listening. She's sending me motions and how, like, how I can do it. I'm in solitary confinement at one point, like having them send me stuff and writing with a pencil. And it was crazy, but we get the stuff filed. And I'm just sitting there waiting for the longest time, and nothing happens. And like years go by. I file in 2019, and I'm like, COVID happened. So then all the courts kind of shut down for that. And then even when the courts go back up, for some reason, the Fresno court didn't have any judges. And it was just something that drug out for a really long time. To make a long story short, I end up getting linked up with a law firm in Washington, D.C. on a project, a pro bono project called King and Spalding. They're at 1700 Pennsylvania Avenue. So if you know anything about DC, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue is another big house that everybody knows about. And that's where Joe Biden and the rest of the staff live. Mm-hmm. So, but King and Spalding being one block over in DC, it's an old law firm that's been around since like the 1880s or something like that. I was head over heels about being able to work with them. I end up getting an attorney there named Carrie Dent, who, if you look at her, she looks just like a sweet lady that, would be harmless, and, you wouldn't give her two looks. A pit bull when it comes to the law. Carrie is like brilliant. And like, it was so impressive that it comes down to a single motion where the judge says, okay, I have this legal hang up, because my case was really unique because this had never been used for really a cannabis offender, just strictly in the cannabis sense. Like, there's other people who had cannabis offenses who got out with this, but they used it in a unique way, like with medical circumstances or something like that. Mm-hmm. I didn't have any medical circumstances. I was a young man when I was locked up. I wasn't really like claiming that I had terminal illness or anything like that. And that law at the time that's how you had to present it. So presenting it strictly on in a cannabis fashion was really, you had to be really creative and a really brilliant attorney. And that's what she was. She destroyed the U.S. attorney when they went against each other. And to make a long story short,
did you use part 1 still, like the medical circumstance, or did you use the part 5, the unusually long sentence?
Okay. So the interesting part is these weren't there then. See, that's okay. What the Amendment 814 changes. 814 adds these things, or modifies it, or expands them. And I'll touch on that really briefly. So at the time with me, the only thing we had that was here was what's called other reasons. And those other reasons inside of extraordinary and compelling circumstances were where you had to get really creative with your language of how you presented your argument. And ours basically was like, hey, if I came before you today, I wouldn't even be charged.
Yes.
Like, how is that not extraordinary and compelling? Like, my case right now could not be prosecuted before you. Yeah. So not only would I get a lesser sentence, you couldn't even charge me. You couldn't even prosecute me. So that's one of the reasons other reasons that we used in my case. And it was really compelling, but everybody doesn't have that unique circumstance. So that's what makes 814 so special. is
Does
because
your case create case law that other people could use?
absolutely. And if you do have any situation where you have anything similar to my case, or if you don't even have something exactly similar to my case, we can, if you DM me or if you tap in with us on the messages and you have someone that you want to ask a specific question about, we can answer it. But yeah, so with my case, it was just specific to like cannabis, right? So I had to create this argument that basically said, if we are coming before our judge today, we couldn't be prosecuted using the amendments that bar the DOJ from using funds to prosecute people who are following state law in states that have cannabis laws. Mm-hmm. So it was a mouthful, but it was a really unique argument, and our judge didn't want to let us out because no one had used it before. It was very novel, and he didn't want to just jump out there and be the first one to do it. And luckily he was, and he made the law. Our case now can be used by other cannabis prisoners. Just type in my name in LexisNexis or type my name in on Google. You can kind of see the whole case law and how it progressed, and then ultimately what got me out. It's all unsealed. It's all for the public. I would not have anything sealed like that because I want these things to be able to be open for other people to use. So yes, please look into that if you think it can help anyone. And then, so what happened with 814, it just went into effect on November 1st. And the U.S. Sentencing Commission added this amendment that broadened the compassionate release statute now. So now we have a broadening of the medical circumstances, which is like super long. I can't even really get into it. And basically says anything that's terminal or chronic that causes you to have like, daily problems throughout prison. That can be one of the reasons that you use for compassionate release. They expand the family circumstances, and that is situations like maybe the main caregiver of your child is ill, or your mother or father has terminal cancer and they need help. They need help, taking care of them, or help, with somebody that can work in the house and help with medical bills and stuff like that. So those are situations. Victim of abuse. If you were incarcerated and you had abuses that happened, of course, rapes and assaults on prison and all those.
We just can't keep you safe in there,
Exactly. So if those things happen, you have an opportunity to present those. And then we have other reasons, which is a really broad thing, which was what I use. And then we have something really interesting that they add called unusually long sentences. And it would be very, very hard for someone to argue against a 60-year sentence for a nonviolent cannabis offense not being unusually long, or a 40-year sentence like Edwin has. So I think that's something that we're going to really be able to use in favor of a lot of the people who are incarcerated for cannabis. And this expansion allows judges the bandwidth to be able to do the things that they couldn't do before, or that they were having hangups on, like my judge was, where they just didn't know if they had the law on their side to be able to do this. And now this U.S. Sentencing Commission is saying, yes, you can. So now we have to do what we can to connect the people that this can help with the lawyers who can help them, which will bring us to the next thing.
That's awesome. And I think it's so perfect and timely that this just happened too.
Right? Yeah.
And we have a whole handout too. And if anybody at the end watching this maybe doesn't have access to the handout, we do have our emails in the last slide. You can always email us or look it up on Google, and you can find this document, because I did find it online as well. Yes. So which brings us to the Glasshouse Justice Impact Program. So if you can talk to us about that and the initiatives that you're leading for Glasshouse to use the resources that we have to help all these nonviolent cannabis offenders that are still incarcerated.
Yeah. So building out the Justice Impact Program at Glasshouse has been really, really exciting, because we are the first company to be able to do this. We are the first company to say, hey, look, let's get somebody that's been in prison for cannabis for a long time and knows the challenges and the obstacles that are facing.
Mhm.
And then we put that person in a position to be able to turn around now and use the resources of Glass House to be able to advocate and reach back and implement those programs and be able to create and build out those programs. So that's super awesome. And one of the first things that we're doing is the Justice Impact Program. And what this is it's a program in combination with Mission Green. And we're in talks with Arizona State University to have their law team and the law school there with Eric Luna. Eric Luna is been in our corner from day one. Shout out to Eric and ASU out there. Huge supporters of everything that we've been doing, huge supporters of Mission Green. And again, just coming together. And what we're doing here is now with that new amendment, we have the amendment now, and now we have people who are incarcerated for cannabis which the amendment can help. So now what we have to do is we have to find the link between them, right? And what Glass House is doing and what Mission Green is doing is we're using our resources to be able to get attorneys for these people. And now we have attorneys who can file petitions on behalf of cannabis prisoners and raise these 814 issues. It's like such an awesome convergence of everything at once. Like you just said, November just passed. It just went into effect. We were building out this program the whole time in hopes that it would pass and go into effect. It did. So our bet paid off there. And now we have this program ready to be able to immediately help people. And what this program does is it's going to file clemency petitions for people. It's going to file the compassionate release motions, like what helped me get out, and what's going to help a lot of other people get out, like Parker and Edwin. And it's going to be tremendous what the compassionate release and the 814 can do. And then also habeas corpus motions. There's people who are at the point in their appeal process where they lost their direct appeal, but they're not quite at the end of the line yet. They still have what's called a habeas corpus motion or a 2255 where they can raise some things. And they're real complicated motions. And you have to have a law degree to be able to understand them and be able to present a compelling argument. So we're going to put people in contact who need any of those services with the attorneys who are going to be able to help them. And then the ASU and the law school and the law students be able to help us with their research and what they're doing over there. It's really exciting. I can't stress enough like how awesome this is, because I went through so many years where I didn't have any attorneys. Like I'm writing, I don't know how many letters I wrote to law firms and attorneys and organizations just trying to get representation. And now we have these programs that have representation for people who need it. And it's such a breath of fresh air. It's a relief. It's an inspiration. And I'm ready to like take that and connect it. So that's what we're excited to do. So if you have somebody who's incarcerated for cannabis, if you know someone who's incarcerated for cannabis, if you're incarcerated for cannabis and somehow you're listening to this, reach out to us, man. There's a form down that you can see on the link. Click on it. That'll it asks a few questions that you can kind of go through eligibility to see if the 814 applies to you. Don't just answer it truthfully. It doesn't mean there's no perfect answers for any of them. There's not like a yes or no or this applies and this eligibility. Everybody's case is unique. We list that so we can kind of see what factors there are and where you would fit in and what happens with you and where you review where you're eligible. So don't worry about the questions. Just answer them as best as you can. Send it in. We'll get back to you, and we'll try to get this program going and link you to the people that you need to be linked with. It's really exciting. I'm happy to be a part of it. I'm happy to be able to do anything we can to give some hope to some people, especially during this time.
Mm-hmm. I'm really happy to see that this program's coming together too. And like you're right, just making those connections. And that is the hardest part, and that this can be the conduit for getting the guys the help and the services to get them released. And so this is wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see, in a year's time, how many people that were able to, get back to their families.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully it makes it to where there's none real fast.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's do a follow-up in 1 year and see the progress of 814. A follow-up webinar would be great,
Yeah.
And to see.
I would love that. I would love that. Well, maybe we can get it. Hopefully we can get some, the people who benefited from it to come
I
on
would
here
love
and
to,
maybe chat with us about it.
I would love that.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about Weldon. We mentioned him a couple times and about Reeform.
Yes.
So can you talk to the audience about
Yeah.
who Weldon is and about the Reeform brand? Yeah.
Yeah. So in what year was it? Okay, so I got to Lompoc in 2008, 2009. So I must have met Weldon shortly after that, 2010. So I mean, we've been friends for over a decade. Initially, when I first met him, we got linked up with him and I through a friend of ours named Solo. It was another young man who had a crazy long sentence. It wasn't for cannabis, but it definitely wasn't something that needed to be as long as he had. But anyway, awesome guy. He ends up linking me and Weldon up because he heard, hey, Luke has this long sentence for cannabis. Weldon has this long sentence for cannabis. Naturally, we'll link them up and see if they hit it off. And we did. And Weldon immediately was on like the same page I was about doing everything we could to fight to get out of prison. We had to find if we didn't have an organization fighting for us, we had to make our own organization. If we didn't have attorneys, then we had to become attorneys. And that's basically what Weldon and I did. For the next 5 years, I would say we put our heads in the law books, studied, and it was books back then. The BOP didn't even have the computer system yet. So you had to go get a book and you would read the case law and you get to a certain part on the case law and it would say, okay, go look at this other case law. And then you had to put that book down and then go back into the library and go find that book. And, that one wasn't there, of course. So you had to, it was madness, but doing it the hard way, we really did learn the law well. And we're able to continue to advocate for ourselves and be strong advocates for other people. And Weldon eventually got out early. He had a 55-year sentence, 55 years for selling pretty much like 3 ounces of weed on 3 separate occasions. But what enhanced his sentence was what's called the 924C law. And what that law is, it's basically unknown to the general public. And it's a law that is basically a firearm enhancement. So if somebody says that they saw a firearm in your car or in your house and you sold cannabis during any of those times where they think they saw it or they heard you talk about having it or anything like that, that gives you a 5-year enhancement. Well, that's on the first one. So if you sell cannabis again the next day to them, guess what happens? That 5 years goes into a 25-year enhancement. So now if you sell it to them again on the 3rd day, now you have another 25 years. And it's by statute, they all have to run consecutively to each other. So that means that you have to serve them one after another. So what ends up happening is he gets 5 years on the first weed deal. He gets 25 years and then 25 years. So he ends up with 55 years. The judge gives him a day for the weed. The judge doesn't even care about the weed really at that point because he had felt so bad that this kid had got so long of a sentence because of a few weed sales that he sentenced them to a day on the cannabis. And Weldon had a 55-year sentence and lost all his appeals, was in a situation where nobody was advocating. Nobody was paying for attorneys, and we had to find a way out to get out ourselves. And, blessings to him and hats off to his hard work and his sister. His sister was one of his biggest advocates. Shout out to Lisa Angelos. And we're able to get a lot of big people involved in his case, celebrities and Senator Mike Lee and Snoop Dogg. And I mean, you name it, like whoever has a name in the industry or on Capitol Hill has probably advocated for Weldon or has heard about him. And, it's a testament to just not giving up on yourself and building that network and continuing to advocate. And he got out and hats off to him. Like we walked around the track and we talked about like what we wanted to do when we got out. And one of the things we were talking about was that there weren't any organizations that focused just on cannabis, like people incarcerated for cannabis. There was other organizations that did mandatory minimums and other ones that focused on crack laws and the 924C laws. But at that time, we didn't have anybody who just focused on cannabis prisoners and, the things that we needed and the laws that were affecting us and those type of things. So he went out and he formed the Weldon Project and Mission Green. And man, he took it and ran. And he has built it out to an organization now that is one of the most respected cannabis advocacy organizations in the nation. You can go anywhere. You can go to New York. You can go to Miami. Everybody has heard of Mission Green and the Weldon Project and Weldon Angelos. And now he's launched his brand Reeform. And it's something that's awesome. This is by someone who actually served the time. This is not like, hey, we're a brand where you're saying, hey, we're going to give back to people who are incarcerated, or hey, we're going to give school supplies to kids. Those things are great. I'm not trying to disparage them. They're awesome. But what I'm saying here is this is going to a person who actually put it on the line. This is going to an advocate. This is going to somebody who actually sacrificed. And that's what's really special about this. Well, the Reeform brand was Weldon's brainchild. He had been talking about it and coming up with it. And it's something that he's really excited about. I'm really excited to get behind it. And he's doing some really awesome things with it, with Oaksterdam. Shout out to Dale Sky Jones and Jeff Jones and everything that they do over there. And the Reeform has collabed with them to be able to put people who have been incarcerated for cannabis, who have now been released and want to get back into the industry and learn what the industry is like now, can go over and enroll in Oaksterdam and be able to educate themselves and take classes. Because let me tell you, it's way different. Like when I got out I had the iPhone 1. It wasn't called the iPhone 1. It was just called the iPhone. There was pay phones. There was CD players. There was MySpace. So that just like gives you an idea of when I went to prison, what was around. And now I come out to the cannabis industry today. So just the launch and the leap that it took to be able to catch up to that was huge. And to be able to have a resource like Oaksterdam to be able to kind of guide you and transition you back into that is really awesome. It's a really good resource that we hope a lot of people take advantage of. So we're really excited about what Reeform can do and the impact that they're going to make in the space. And it's something that like I shout from the rooftops.
Yeah. No, the Project Mission Green, Weldon Project, great organizations. One of the same. Mission Green is part of the Weldon Project. And Reeform, great brand, great flower, indoor flower, great product. About to come out with 3 new SKUs, which I'm very excited about. And another thing too that is very similar, Weldon was a very young father with 2 young children as well.
2 sons.
When he was taken away from his family. So, and he was a family man too. And that was something that very much impacted him too. So, I'm very glad, that you guys were able to, bond and that you guys still remain close and you guys still support each other.
My dog, man. He's my dog. He always will be. And I always support whatever he does because he's such a good person and a good father too. And I know his sons are really important to him and they're really happy to have him home. So it's an awesome thing.
Yeah. All right. And then some other justice organizations that we just wanted to mention to everybody too. If you want to just kind of shout these guys out.
Yeah. I mean, who we've been talking about, Weldon Angelos and the Weldon Project and Mission Green. Check them out at projectmissiongreen.org. They're awesome organization. Great work. I've been working with them since I've been out. I've been working with them since their inception. They do great things. Freedom Grow Forever, Stephanie Landa, Kristen Floor, Carly, Richard. I mean, everybody over there, the whole crew over at Freedom Grow. I can't even.
How do they differ? Would you say like Weldon Project?
Well, the way Randy Lanier is the president over at Freedom Grow now. He was also a individual that was incarcerated for cannabis. So it's really awesome to have a stakeholder at the helm of that organization over there with Stephanie, who again was also not only a woman who was incarcerated for cannabis, but one that runs an advocacy organization. Shout out to Stephanie. She's been in it since day one. Like she was writing me letters. She had another organization that you and I had talked about called LPOP, the Land of Prison Outreach Project. And I mean, I was getting letters from them in like 2010. So, I mean, again, just somebody who's been in this game for a long time. Shout out to Stephanie and them. But the way they differ is like Freedom Grow is more a direct link to the actual prisoners and the commissary accounts and the stuff that they do directly for the prisoners and like their families and children. So Freedom Grow does a lot of excellent things like holiday toy drives. They do things where they send commissary money directly to prisoners, and Mission Green. Some of these things overlap. Mission Green does the commissary money, and some of them are exclusive. But Freedom Grow has letter writing programs, book programs. They do events all around the nation where they raise advocacy and go around and make sure everybody knows and gets letters to the president and stuff like that. So Freedom Grow is definitely more of a grassroots, just awesome organization that been around from the very beginning of this whole movement. The next one is the Last Prisoner Project. Last Prisoner Project was created out of the brainchild of Steve D'Angelo and the work that he's done in that space. The Mary and I can't remember, I forget the other lady that was at the helm. I apologize. I
would say this was like funded by the cannabis industry. I would say mostly.
Sure, it's funded mostly by the cannabis industry, and they're very effective. Listen, my hat goes off to Last Prisoner Project. Not only do they give large grants to cannabis prisoners and their families, they helped out my daughter several times.
Wonderful.
Jasmine was really, really thankful for a lot of the stuff that they did. Yeah, and they do a lot of great work. Stephanie Sheps over there. There's a ton of great people that work at that organization that are superstars. So and like I said, very effective. Because the industry, like that's one of the main donation centers of the industry, they're able to use a lot of those resources and do a lot of really good work. So the Last Prisoner Project, does a lot of things. They just collabed with Burner and Vibes Papers to do release papers, and they actually highlight Edwin Rubis on that, and it's pretty cool. So really, I wish I had a pack that I could show. I don't know. Hold on. I might have one. I love it. I don't. I'm sorry. I don't. My girlfriend Mandy she had a pack that was given to her, but it's a really cool like campaign and project where they have a rolling papers and you open it up and it has Edwin's name, and the Last Prisoners Project's doing that in collab with Vibes and Burner. So shout out to them. That's awesome work that they do.
That's dope.
The Can Do Clemency Project. Now they're a little bit broader. They aren't specific to just cannabis. It's really it is all nonviolent drug offenders. And that's what it stands for is, cannabis. I forget the exact acronym, but it's basically cannabis for all nonviolent drug offenders. And, but Amy Povoff, who is the helm of that organization, focuses really on cannabis prisoners, and puts a lot of energy towards them. She does really great work. She did time, was in the federal prison system for a long time, ended up getting out, got a pardon by Bill Clinton, which was really cool for her. And she's like, had that connection with the White House and, Washington for a long time. So she's very effective in what she does. She was very instrumental in my release too. She advocated all these organizations that we're talking about here took a part in me getting out. So I want to just stop right here and just say that, like, I thank all these organizations. And if you support me being here and people like me being here, coming, and more people coming and sitting in this seat, continue to support these organizations.
All of them. They're all good. They all awesome.
And they all have unique niches that help this industry and help the community. So really, if you can get behind any single one of these, if you can get behind all of these, please do it.
Yeah. Thank you for all the work that you guys do.
Yes.
All right. And then, I wanted to also let people know before we share our contact information, like things that they can do. We talked about writing a letter, but I also just wanted to share some tips of things that people might think that they're writing you guys a letter, but sometimes they might write you guys a letter and they might accidentally do something that might get the letter thrown away.
No, that's very good.
Add some tips, don't do this.
Yes. Okay. So my easiest tip is make the letter just on white paper, white envelope, blue or black ink. If you do any kind of stickers or any color or glitter or anything like that, it's not going to end up getting to them. It'll just get sent back or it'll get thrown away. So white letter, blue or black ink. It can be printed. It can be handwritten. It doesn't have to be, doesn't have to be written. You can print it off your computer, but it has to be blue or black ink on white paper in a white envelope. And that's pretty much it. They can receive pictures. They can receive up to 25 pictures at one time. So that's pretty cool. We usually like send those in separately so that they can get the, so it doesn't just slow the mail up. Sometimes the pictures get slowed up because they want to go through them and make sure there's nothing in them. So yeah, just follow those rules. They'd love to hear from you.
How can you put money on someone's books? Can you send like a money order and just put like their number on it? Like how does that all out?
There's a couple of different ways. You can send a postal money order to the lockbox in Iowa, and that you just Google the BOP lockbox in Iowa, and it'll show you the steps of how you can send a postal money order to the lockbox, and that'll go onto their books, and that usually takes a couple weeks. Or you can do it immediately on Western Union. And all you have to have is their name and their registration number. And you just kind of type those two things in, city code and state code. The state code is going to be DC. The city code is going to be FBOP. And it'll get to them immediately. So that's usually the best way to do it if you can. If you can send it through a money order, then you can go ahead and do it through the lockbox too. And listen, I don't care what they say. I don't care if they've never asked you for money before. People need money in prison. They charge you for everything. They charge you for soap. They charge you for toilet paper. They charge you for food. They charge you for any hygiene. Like everything costs money. So, they need it in there. And just to be able to survive in there is not cheap, especially now with inflation and all the crazy stuff, because their limits and the amount of money that they are able to have didn't change. Just inflation and the prices did. So it's even more difficult now.
Yeah, and one of Weldon's messages that he shares in Mission Green is that they feed you enough to keep you alive, basically, but not enough for you to thrive. That's part of Mission Green's goal is to put money on, and on books to keep, people healthy enough to. Yeah,
listen, if you had to survive just on the meals that they issued you, it would be rough, especially now. Like, people who maybe served time 10 years ago or so, they kind of don't understand what we're talking about now. But post-COVID, the meals are you would have a hard time feeding a small toddler on the amount of calories that we're giving our prisoners right now. So, it's not a want, it's a necessity to be able to have commissary in there.
Yeah. These are all great ways that you guys can get active. You can share on social media, maybe it's just one of these stories, per a week, how people can get active. If you find like an online petition, you can share that. You can, start a letter. I like to sometimes start a letter at work and I'll put it on my break room. Although I find sometimes people drip oil from food and I'm like, I bet the guards aren't going to let that through now. I'm like, they're going to think that's something funny on it, so somewhere maybe where it's clean, it's not going to get weird oily drips on it, and like people can draw pictures and add to that card, so ask your friends to add to letters. It says you can add, send a magazine subscription. I bet that would be really cool and stimulating to a prisoner. Put money on a book. You can sign a clemency petition. And then, of course, call a representative, especially if someone like in your district, in your state, in your area, even if it's not, just freaking, if you have extra time, call in that person's area. And, calls go really far.
It literally only takes a couple minutes and it can really have a big impact on somebody's life. Yeah,
definitely. Calls go further than emails go probably the least, make the least amount of impact. Written letters, more so. And then, calls the farthest. So. And then I just wanted to leave you guys all with our contact information. But I just had a couple questions, just a quick question.
Sure.
So Luke, what do you have coming up down the road here? Is there anything new that people can get involved with?
Yes. So again, I can't stress enough the Justice Impact Program. Support us, get involved in it. Tell people that you want Glass House and Mission Green. When you see us, come up and tell us. Come up and shake our hand. Yeah, there's just like there's so many cool like ways that you can get involved, and it's usually unique to like the person, right? It's like what motivates you, where do you feel like you can fit in with us on that. So that's important.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, I'm so excited about 814 just passing in November, and seeing how many people we can get out of jail. Do you know how much currently the prison system spends per year to incarcerate somebody in federal prison?
The last time I checked, the DOJ's BOP budget, which is the Bureau of Prisons, was $7 billion.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I do believe it's like about the same amount of money that we spend to put someone through higher education.
Oh, okay, yeah. So individually, individually per person. Yes. Okay, so individually per person, it at last stat, and we actually get updated when you're in prison. They actually update you on this each year. It comes out at the end of the year. So their new one will be coming out this year, and it's right about in federal prison. It's right about $30,000 to $33,000, and it kind of fluctuates in between that. So yeah, and that's per year. And I don't know where that money goes, because the food that they feed you and the clothing and the stuff that is state issued is extremely poor quality and extremely small portions. So yeah, and actually, let me back up a little bit to talk a little bit about what I have up. I talk about some of that craziness. We have a book that's dropping. It's called High Price. It's going to be ready for pre-order, and that is on Black Friday. So Google it, High Price, Luke Scarmazzo. It'll be ready for pre-order. And that's where I talk about a lot of these things. I talk about the industry. I talk about how it began. I talk about the trial and the dispensary, and then some of the stuff that happens in prison. So it's unique because it segues right into what we're doing here and tells that same story, but in a little bit of a different way. And I get a little bit more detailed, and you kind of see how the sausage is made and how we got to this part of the industry.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm definitely going to look out for that book, High Price, and to learn more about your story, because it's definitely very, very interesting. And we were talking earlier, I'm like, your life could be a movie. So I'm definitely going to pick up that book,
I'm super excited about it. It's just, we were taking pictures for the cover the other day, and it just really started hitting me. And I was like, wow, like it's just something I really wanted to always accomplish, of publishing a book and telling just a really awesome story that I think needs to be told. So I'm excited about it. I feel like everybody around me is starting to get excited about it. So now I'm starting to be like, okay, wow, this is like real. So let's go. So yeah, it's awesome. But yeah, tap in with us. Tap in with us on the email. If you know somebody who's incarcerated for cannabis, if you just want to ask us some questions, if you want some clarification about something we talked about, tap in with us, talk to us, hit us on our emails, hit us in the chat. I had an awesome time tonight, Candace.
Yeah, I did too. I'm really excited about getting this information disseminated out to, more cannabis offenders. We were talking earlier about, the Justice Impact Program, and about how we can even, take the information that we just found out today about, Amendment 814 and getting out in core links, and, let's, get some cannabis offenders back out into their families. Let's, get them out of the justice system. Let's, save some money, get them out of the, justice system. Thank you so much for being, a great guest today. Definitely look out for, your book, High Price. I know you have some other exciting things coming down the pipeline. So definitely, do you want to talk about that now, or maybe we could just have people,
I can't give everything. We have to save some stuff, or nobody's going to want to listen to me next time I come. So I got to save
tease them for that.
But tune in next time. We have some exciting updates for you guys.
Yeah, we'll tease them for that, and they can check in with us next time, and we'll have some exciting updates about, how many people have taken advantage of these new opportunities through Amendment 814. Thank you guys so much for being with us today and learning about, the cannabis prisoners that have been left behind, and, are still behind bars.
Happy birthday, V.
Yes,
Amber D. Thank you, everybody in the chat that kept it live and kept us active. Appreciate you guys hitting us.
We hope that this information that we've shared will help you become better informed cannabis consumers, and that the information that what we've shared will help you find relief. Until next time, we hope you all stay healthy and well, and we look forward to seeing you another time. Thank you so much. Bye.